How we doing, boys? Coming at you with a mock draft this evening. We are picking from the 110 spot in a 12-man league. So this is obviously underdog, best ball. We already had, the big three kind of fly off the board. Just waiting to see what's going to happen here. This is an interesting draft spot. I don't think I've particularly drafted from this area at all yet. So I'm interested to see kind of, what might come of this. I do like the idea of getting something close to back-to-back picks. So we're going to get some either high-end wide receivers as like a stack, or some of the more two middle-of-the-pack running backs. Because obviously the big ones fly off the board, so C-Mac, Dalvin Cook, and Derrick Henry. And then the next three are somewhat questionable with Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, and Jonathan Taylor. And then they had the two big receivers, Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, go fly off the board. And then Travis Kelce at the 109. So now we're in an interesting spot. Saquon Barkley is obviously somewhat questionable, so I'm not super stoked about the prospects of getting him. I think Aaron Jones, his ADP is going to go up significantly, but I think we're going to go ahead and snag us some Stephon Diggs before the clock runs out, and I think we'll grab Aaron Jones on the turnaround in 3 or 4 picks. I think Aaron Jones is going to continue to fly up draft and ADP, more so even than a handful of the other running backs. You can make a case to draft him at 6 instead of Jonathan Taylor. There's no competition really in that backfield. AJ Dillon will get his carries for sure, but he's more of like a bruiser between the tackles guy. I could see Aaron Jones getting a bunch of receptions this year again, obviously, and I think he is currently going a little bit below. See, you're even seeing Barkley and Eckler go ahead of him now in ADP, and he's kind of the next big name coming off. He averages as the 13th or 13.6 in drafts, which is fine, but you can definitely make the case to get him inside the top 12. So one more pick away. You see there's quite the gap here too, right? So yeah, he did just barely get sucked up there. Not quite worth reaching on Gibson here. So let's see what our wide receiver stack is looking like. I feel like I kind of have to go with Calvin Ridley here. He is just going to be a freak. Way too much opportunity for him. Julio's gone. We saw what he was able to do without Julio, obviously, and he did quite well. So I think there's no reason to believe that he won't be able to do the same. I think Kyle Pitts is going to add a lot to that offense and suck some pressure, hopefully. As soon as one of them starts to eat, they'll draw the necessary coverage, and then the other one will obviously kind of pick up some slack there. So I would not be surprised if Calvin ended in the top 5 wide receivers. So right now, the double wide receiver stack that we have, especially in a best ball league like what Underdog is, we're looking all right. We got them both. I think we reached a little bit on both of them. Nothing crazy though. As you can see, we picked Stephon Diggs just below his ADP, and same with Calvin Ridley. So we were able to get them pretty much right about where they're going. So to follow the Ridley, we had D-Hop go off the board, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Gibson, Darren Waller, and then we're waiting on this next pick here. Curious to see. The other thing that's interesting, I believe Underdog is a 3 wide receiver league too, so there is actually some increased value in a best ball league with going a little heavier on wide receivers. And I'm actually super okay with some of these mid-round running backs that we have. Like Damian Harris, ADP is 85. I think he'll have a pretty successful season. Even Kareem Hunt, he put up pretty decent numbers as a RB2. If anything happens to Nick Chubb, he's gonna be absolutely amazing. That David Montgomery, I think, is gonna have an amazing year. He finished so strong last year. I'd be shocked if he didn't do the same. The coaching staff and everyone's already coming out saying 20 carries is easy for him to manage this year. So if he gets anywhere close to that, and with a younger quarterback too, they're going to lean on the run a bit. We know the line isn't that great, but just the fact that, you know, they have to work in the younger quarterback and a new quarterback. So it's either Andy Dalton or Justin Fields. So it's going to be tough either way with a new quarterback or a young quarterback. So it's important, I guess, to give whoever it is the necessary space they need. And most often when there's new quarterbacks, they lean on the run quite heavily, and he's a guy that I think can absorb a lot of that pressure there. All right, so then we had A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, McLaurin. Oh, sorry. After Waller was Hilaire, Metcalf, Swift, DeAndre Swift, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, McLaurin, Keenan Allen, another guy I'm pretty high on this year. Justin Herbert in his second season, and Keenan Allen's like one of the best route runners in the league. I'd be shocked if he wasn't able to put up some pretty significant numbers. All right, so we still have Chris Carson, Montgomery on the board. We are leaning towards grabbing a running back here. Chris Carson goes off. George Kittle follows. Interesting. 3 more picks. Allen Robinson goes. I have a feeling David Montgomery is probably going to go off here before we're able to grab him. CeeDee Lamb goes. 1 more pick. Montgomery is an absolute must here. Oh, he goes Patrick Mahomes. Okay, so we're grabbing Montgomery. This is great, great value where we're getting him right now. So I guess we kind of reached on him a little bit, right? So we have pick 34, and we took him 7 slots ahead of that. But we don't need wide receivers, so Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Robert Woods, those guys would all kind of be in that range. We're not concerned about them right now. We wanted to get a solid RB1, and I think he'll be able to do that pretty easily. Now the question is, do we gamble on Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs? Mike Davis, I think, is a bit underrated. I think he's got a pretty decent shot to, we saw what he did last year when he was given the opportunities. I can't see a reason why he wouldn't be able to do that now. There's not a lot left in the tank for Gurley. And Gurley was even pretty productive too. But they're going to have to use all their options that they have in Atlanta. So I think Mike Davis is in a position to produce quite a bit for us. It's a pretty solid offense, fast-paced offense at least. He'll have a lot of opportunities. They are pretty pass-heavy, but that's not to say that he won't be able to still produce. Wide receivers, we're still looking at decent value. So Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, and DJ Moore just went off the board. We are staring down, and then Tyler Lockett followed. Robert Woods, Julio Jones, Chris Godwin, and Cooper Kupp. Wow, that's kind of a tough lineup. It's funny, it's actually 2 LA players, and then there's Jamar Chase and T. Higgins following that, so 2 Cincinnati players. I don't know, it's tough. It's tough to lean into any of those when we already have Stephon Diggs and Ridley. I guess if I had to pick, I would go with either Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp. So we end up going with Robert Woods there. I think I ran out of time. I was talking too much. That's fine. Robert Woods is like absolutely just Mr. Consistent. He's been, I think, the wide receiver 15 or like something close to that the last 4 years or so. 3 years maybe. Like he's finished at like 13, 15, and 16, like something along those lines. So I think he'll do just fine. And I think Stafford is going to have a great time throwing to Robert Woods. He's got a bunch of security blankets over there. and they're forced to throw a lot now with their running back situation obviously being a little hindered by that ankle injury. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're leaning heavily on the run this year. And Robert Woods, Robert Woods gets quite a few rushes every year. He always gets that like sneaky, 1 or 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns a year by like that little end around or whatever you want to call it, that little wheel run. So I wouldn't be shocked if Robert Woods snuck into the backfield quite a bit and had some good, get him in motion and get him on the edge, and get the ball in his hands and let him be athletic. So I wouldn't be shocked if he was able to put up some numbers that way as well, which would be cool. So we definitely have to switch gears and go some more running backs. This is like almost accidentally like a 0 running back strategy, which is fine. I'm hoping. So our next spot, we're at the 5'10". There's a chance, everyone else went pretty heavy on the running backs, I think. There's a chance we'll be able to land Mike Davis. If not, maybe Kareem Hunt. I guess Kareem Hunt is definitely in the wheelhouse in terms of ADP. I think our big target is going to be Damian Harris later in the draft. He's just a huge... he's so slept on with his locking down of that role. I believe Rex Burkhead's gone now, or he hasn't signed a contract yet. And just Damian Harris we saw what he could do at the end of last year in like a pretty shitty offense, and they are greatly improved. So I imagine they're going to score a lot more touchdowns this year than they did last year. There's all the reason to believe that he'll have a lot more opportunities to produce for us. Any sort of positive game script is great. So yeah, the only other running back that would be a threat for him is Sony Michel, which is not the case. And then James White, he'll get his shares for sure, but I don't see him eating up a bunch of rushes. He'll definitely consume a lot in the passing game. But Damian Harris is not a receiving back anyways. He's a between the tackles guy. I think Damian Harris would be a good guy to snag. Not this round, probably in the 7th. Because we'll have the... actually, no, we won't be picking till the 7-10. So that might be the perfect time to reach on him a little bit. So with that the case, right, we know... So we have about 6 picks until I'm up. Let's check out wide receiver and tight end. So we have Kyler Murray, who is actually, I love going quarterback at your 5th overall pick that you have, because there's just so many options of a bunch of dudes that can produce like a shit ton. So you have Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, who both could easily have potential to be like top 3, and you're getting them after guys like Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, and so on. Additionally, we still have Justin Herbert as an option a little later in the draft, but I don't think there's enough for us in the draft currently where we're at, where we're going to get a lot of value out of most players at the 5'10", especially because we're stacked on wide receiver and the running backs we're targeting are a bit later. I guess Darrell Henderson is probably a decent pick, given that he is the back for the Rams. But so we'll be able to follow this pick up here with a quarterback now, because we're not super interested in the rest of the guys. Javonte Williams is good, but I don't see a situation where Melvin Gordon isn't getting some touches in that backfield, especially at the beginning of the year. He's actually a great mid-season target in my opinion, because week 3, 4, whatever, he probably won't do too much up until that point. So after a couple weeks, he might slip to the waiver, or you might be able to get him in some sort of package deal or something like that. Definitely worth considering that mid-season. But he's definitely one of those guys you want to get in the middle of the season, and you don't want to get him at the beginning of the draft. And that's just my opinion. Damian Harris was like the perfect example of that last year. I think whoever took him in my league got him like, one of the last picks. And then he sat on the dude's bench, and I think he ended up dropping him or trading him or something like that, and then he went off in the second year. That's pretty common for younger running backs entering the league to do something like that. So now that Murray and Jackson are both taken, I might wait and shoot for Herbert here. There's plenty of quarterbacks later. So let's see if we can stack up. I think Kareem Hunt might be the move here. Again, a bit of a reach. I'm just not super comfortable with Williams. Obviously, this is best ball, and Kareem Hunt will have those games where he just absolutely goes off. So we'll go for Hunt here. Actually, let's check out tight end real quick. Mark Andrews is available. Yeah, that might be the move. Yeah, we'll go with Mark Andrews. Snag that tight end. So technically, I believe he was a bit of a value, right? ADP is 60. We got him at 63, so that's fine. That's the biggest thing for me, I think, when drafting is simply just drafting for value, and loading up on positions is fine because it gives you just an arsenal of just security in one sense, but also like trade fodder. You can use, a couple good weeks from one guy at a position that you have a lot of, and use that to your advantage to, buy low on some other players and sell high on some of yours. So you can be pretty strategic like that. Like if this was a standard league, right? Obviously, I'd be in the market for a running back at some point because I'm pretty thin at running back. But I'm pretty loaded on wide receivers, so I could feasibly make some sort of trade. Robert Woods is like a great option to trade out and get a pretty decent, RB2 or like lower RB1 maybe, depending on what the trade is. So just some stuff to kind of keep in mind. I'm hearing a lot of good stuff about Michael Carter coming out of camp too. I'm curious. Unfortunately, the Jets are just so bad that regardless, unless you're a freak athlete, you still might not do much. Like, Le'Veon Bell was getting the ball like 30 times a game, and he was still getting like 10 points a game, maybe. So we definitely, just because he's the only guy there doesn't necessarily mean he's going to do a whole lot. Again, similar situation, though. It's easier to rush the ball and, develop the run when you have a young quarterback. And they might try and do that for Zach Wilson just to give him some hope. And hopefully take the linebackers and stuff off his back a little bit. Trey Sermon's another guy that's kind of slipping a bit that could have a pretty successful year. That offense is just built to handle a bunch of running backs. We've seen it the last couple seasons. And they've never really had a guy that played the whole year, didn't get injured either in terms of running backs. So it'd be interesting to see if he can actually string together a full season, if he can perform at a pretty high level. Ryan Tannehill, absolute steal in drafts right now. He could easily be a top 3 quarterback. With Julio Jones in that offense now, it is just insane. And you have the dichotomy of also having the best running back or one of the best running backs in the league. The secondary has to respect Derrick Henry so much. It's insane to me that Ryan Tannehill you can get in almost the 11th round, especially when you're comparing him to the other guys in a similar spot, right? Like Joe Burrow coming off that ACL injury, Tom Brady, who is in his mid-40s now, who also has an insane wide receiver core. And obviously people say it every year. He's got to come down eventually. When that happens, we won't know. But Ryan Tannehill, he's playing some of the best football he's played in his entire career, and he's really hitting his stride. And, they did a lot to step up that defense a bit too. So I think a lot of that is going to help him really just thrive in that offense a bit more. They didn't have the best luck last year. Okay, so it's looking like we might be able to sneak in that early pick to Damian Harris. Ooh, I love that. Antonio Brown also available. So let's see what this guy grabs. So he took Trey Sermon. So we're going to take Harris here, and then we're going to follow up with Antonio Brown, I think. I imagine these next two. Imagine Cortland Sutton and Juju might get snagged. Sutton is really slipping. Yeah, he just got picked up. That's fine. Antonio Brown's like a no-brainer. He's like one of the best wide receivers the last couple weeks of the season last year. All right. We got a pretty solid squad so far. Great tight end, 3 solid wide receivers who are they all have very solid floors, and Stephon Diggs and Calvin Ridley in particular have insanely high ceilings. Okay, so depends. This guy's got 4 receivers, so he doesn't really need Antonio Brown. So does the next guy as well. Curious who they take though. There's not a lot of options. At running back, they're going to look at like Mostert or Michael Carter maybe. Dallas Goedert's a decent tight end to grab. He did take Antonio Brown, the bastard. Okay, so looking now. Let's see what quarterback is like. Yeah, we can wait a bit and get Tannehill down the road, I think. Curtis Samuel was taken also. Okay. So, we're pretty solid at running back. Wide receiver. I'm not really... Oh, actually... Jarvis Landry. That's a bit of a reach right now. Jarvis Landry is another, like, insanely consistent guy. I might just throw one at Michael Carter. Oh, missed the pick, and it went for Will Fuller instead. Well, that'll be good. The one game he has 60 points, and then gets injured the rest of the year, or smokes too much pot or whatever he did last year. Okay, so I got to be a little quicker on the trigger here, making selections. All right, so we're still looking for a quarterback. We're going to aim for Tannehill. We have the 9-10, which is about, a good spot to grab Tannehill, I think. So that's another important thing to note. Like, obviously the difference between a QB1 and QB2 is almost like negligible. Like, it's like 1 point a game or something. So it's okay to wait like super late and just go for it on a quarterback in like the 10th round, 11th round. And you can still see guys like Joe Burrow was lighting it up before his knee got blasted. Tannehill, obviously. Matthew Stafford was putting up some decent numbers. Tom Brady did well as well. This is a great section here. These like 4 or 5 guys, all of which will get you like 18 to 20 something points a game probably on average. And they also all have, a pretty relatively high floor. Jalen Hurts probably has one of the higher ones just because of his rushing ability. So he'll be able to give you, 60 yards rushing a game or something like that. That's going to boost him a little bit and just make him consistent for you. But these other guys also have like insanely high ceilings. Like, look at the talent on all these teams. Maybe less so the Philly. Joe Burrow has an arsenal of, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, like insane wide receiver core. Tom Brady obviously has Goodwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown. He gets some good receptions out of his running backs as well sometimes. I think they just got Gio Bernard as well. Like, he's got plenty of targets. Obviously, Tannehill just got Julio, which is just insane. And then A.J. Brown, who's also a freak athlete and just a beast of a human. And then Matt Stafford has Tyler Higbee, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp. Like, they all have really, really good options that even if 1 or 2 injuries takes place, they're in, like, pretty decent shape. Alright, so let's look at wide receivers again. Not a whole lot. Alright, so tight end. Robert Tonyan's pretty good pick down here at the 120. He was tight end 3 last year, and he's slipping past everyone. I know it's unlikely that he'll repeat, and it's unlikely that Aaron Rodgers will have the MVP season he did last year. But there's like reason to believe that like Robert Tonyan will be fine. Like he'll be all right. Will he be number 3? Probably not. Will he be top 5? Maybe. And that's like a risk I'm willing to take down at 121 for the average draft position. That's like a no-brainer. All right, so Russell Gage went off the board. Goddard, Marquise Brown, Joe Burrow. Devontae Parker's a cool pick down here too. I'm curious how that offense is going to function this year. It's a little scary. I'm not super excited about it. All right, so we got Tannehill coming up here. We could just go for both of them if we really wanted to. All right, so A.J. Dillon's also pretty good. We know, like I said earlier, he's going to get some looks this year. Yeah, not interested in doing any of those guys. So we're going to go ahead. We'll reach a bit on Tannehill. I'm a little higher on Tannehill, I think, than I am on Jalen Hurts. I've seen enough of Tannehill to believe that he'll be able to produce and do some of the stuff, that he did last year. It's a little harder to project some of that stuff for Jalen Hurts. We just haven't seen it yet. And that's fine. That's not to say he won't. It's just I'd rather buy the product that I know what the product is instead of try some mystery. Okay, so we got pretty balanced squad so far. We have a lot of, I guess it looks like running backs are pretty solid in terms of their just like baseline production. Not a lot of high ceiling players. Wide receivers, on the other hand, have very high floors but also high ceilings. And then obviously Mark Andrews is a little bit of both as well, and so is kind of Tannehill. So a couple of these guys have some stacked weeks. We're looking pretty good. Melvin Gordon is pretty good here. I like Melvin Gordon better than either of these two, I think. James Conner is just, his injury history is concerning. Melvin Gordon, like I said before, I think he's going to start the year, and he's going to fight for carries. Like, he's to be respected, I think. And look, 2020, 215 carries. His yards were inefficient. They have a better wide receiver, or better quarterback this year. Pretty solid wide receiver core that's hopefully healthy this year. I just think I'm, for whatever reason, really high on Melvin Gordon. He's one of these guys that, you can take him now, right? So we got him at pick 111. So depending if you're 10 or 12-man league or whatever, this is probably 9th round or later. You can draft Melvin Gordon. He will be the starting running back for the first handful of games. He will demand carries, goal line carries, everything. And he's also a very amazing receiving back. So keep that in mind as well. He's gonna enforce himself on the offense. Denver would be foolish not to use him. He's too talented. We saw what he did 2-3 years ago. He was before he was on his holdout and stuff like that. He was an absolute freak. And even if it's for the first 4 games, he might single-handedly win you 4 games going into next season at the beginning of the year. And sometimes those first couple games are the most important because it's the most difficult to kind of figure out where the pace of the year is going, how the NFL is playing out, everything like that. Melvin Gordon is one of those guys you snag in the 9th round. use him for weeks, 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4. After that, you fucking dump his ass, trade him high to someone else, get someone that is on the rise. So like last year, it would have been like a Damian Harris or whatever. Fill some gaps on your team. Get someone that is going to start to take over their offense or find their stride in their offense for Melvin Gordon later in the year. And Melvin Gordon could still end up a top 20 running back. So I think he's a great pick at that part of the draft. All right, so after Gordon, we saw quite a few guys go off the board. I think E.J. Moore, Robert Tonyan, so he did go. He went at the 10-5. Stafford, Corey Davis, Baker Mayfield, Irv Smith, David Johnson, Greg Davis, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Gus Edwards, a bunch of guys. James Conner just went. Now we're getting into another interesting spot for running backs. I think we're pretty solid so far. Let me check out the wide receivers again. Jalen Reagor is a decent guy, I think. I think Philly might have a pretty surprisingly solid wide receiver core and just offense in general. Pretty high on Emmanuel Sanders, too. We saw what John Brown was able to do. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is going to consume 30% of the target share, maybe more. But other people have to get it. Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders are both too talented, and they will both produce. And again, in a best ball league, it's pretty easy to just say, okay, he'll have a handful of pretty good games this year. So you need to fill those holes. Marvin Jones, another guy, I think at the beginning of the year anyways, he will be leaned on a lot as a veteran. And he always has those 2-3 games a year where he gets 3 touchdowns and nothing else. No sooner do they say that, he flies off the draft board. Okay, so not crazy about these guys. I'm looking at Jalen Reagor right now. He's probably the one I'm most high on. Adam Troutman's decent as well, but I don't think I need him as a tight end as much. So yeah, let's throw some love to Jalen Reagor. That offense is just dying to get going. They have way too much young talent to not, see some success. All right, let's see what we got. Justin Fields, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Okay. I low-key love Ryan Fitzpatrick as a flyer. Right, we have Tannehill, super consistent, but Ryan Fitzpatrick, he fucking slings the ball. He airs it out. I think we got to go with a tight end here. And Gerald Everett's a little tempting. So Rondell Moore went. Oh, that's his team. Yes, I'm interested. Anthony Ferkser could even see some good numbers this year. It's tough. Tight end's tricky. It all looks so good. You could convince yourself of any tight end that they're probably decent, but that's not always the case, obviously. We know that a little too well. Latavius Murray just went. Yeah, I'm not loving any of the wide receiver picks here. I can wait a bit on quarterback. I think I do need to stack a tight end. Oh, so someone took Troutman. Okay. I think I'm just going to go with Gesicki. He'll have 800 yards, 8 touchdowns maybe, if he has and that'd be a pretty solid year for him. I got him a little past his ADP. I'm okay with having just those two. Jonnu Smith would have been interesting to grab also. Jesus. 41 receptions for Jonnu Smith. 8 touchdowns. So 1 in 5 of his receptions goes for a touchdown. And then he had a 9th touchdown as a rush. That's insane. I cannot wait to see what happens with him and Hunter Henry. So Hunter Henry had 600. Alright, so now we are approaching my next pick. I'll probably get that second quarterback. We're 15 picks out though. Okay, so I think we have 6 more players to pick. And then we will be done after that. So let's see what else we got here. Jamal Williams. See, these picks I also sometimes have the habit of just going for backup running backs. Just finding that handcuff. So like Alexander Madison, he's an insanely, like, he could start on a lot of rosters in the NFL. Unfortunately, he's stuck behind Dalvin Cook, who is the second best running back in the league right now. Or like at least top 5. I guess it's all debatable. It's reasonable to assume that if he goes down, if Dalvin Cook goes down with some sort of injury, that Alexander Madison is a top 10 guy the rest of the year. Like, no doubt in my mind, that would definitely happen. So in leagues like this, it's worth that kind of fly on him, just see what happens. Just see what you can get out of that. Especially when I don't have to choose, right? Because, like I said, it's best ball, right? So I don't have to set my lineup or do any of that shit. I just pick the players and be like, oh, is there a week he might have a 30-plus point game? Yeah, probably. I'd say that for a lot of guys. So you obviously want to balance some consistency, right? You want guys that are going to get you 20 points a week or 15 points a week or whatever the number is. But you also want to have that boom potential that, you know, they'll be the RB1 or the wide receiver 1 or the number 1 player that week, you know, occasionally. And that always kind of happens. Alright, so as I say that, a bunch of RB2s go, or former RB2s even. Devin Singletary, Alexander Madison, Jamal Williams, Rashard Penny, and Philip Lindsay go off the board. Like, Penny's a good example of that. As soon as Chris Carson goes, Penny's automatically like number 1 on the waiver wire. J.D. McKissick. This guy's interesting because he had the second most receptions of all running backs last year, and it was only behind, I believe it was Christian McCaffrey. I think it was Christian McCaffrey, maybe it wasn't. But being second in receiving yard and receptions, no one else was close. J.D. McKissick had 80 receptions last year, and there was, I think the next highest was like 56. So I'm going to take the flyer on that. And now I am looking at Fitzmagic. I'm okay with taking Fitzmagic here. Let's see, what are we at? So we just took McKissick at 154. Interesting. I remember when Jared Goff was good for like a couple weeks. Especially if you're in a PPR league, those receiving quarterbacks. So 80 receptions. How else did he do? Oh, I can't look at his stats anymore. So if he had 80 receptions, right, by the 15 games he was in, like, that means he's getting 5 receptions a game. That's pretty good. That's 5 points a game. Boom, right there, not including any yards that he gets. Alright, so we're going to go and get Fitzmagic. Oh, I probably should have looked at bye weeks too. I never do that. Okay, we're doing alright with bye weeks. Another guy I love taking at the end of drafts, and I was doing this even before some of the recent news came out. Oops, Deshaun Watson. He is far too valuable to go undrafted. Similar to Antonio Brown the last couple years, or even oh my God, what's his name? Josh Gordon. Like, Josh Gordon was like the perennial like last pick of any draft, because in the off chance that he comes back, he is going to be an absolute steal. I don't agree with, obviously, whatever his allegations are and all that stuff. Like, if he's that type of person, that's kind of shitty. But if you're in the business of winning fantasy football games and he goes to some sort of litigation and he is, not suspended from the league or something indefinitely or whatever, and he's playing football, and you can get him for cheap on like your last or second to last pick in the draft, he is definitely worth the risk. Because the risk is almost none. Because look, his ADP is 178, and that's probably shot up 20 points in the last couple weeks or the last couple days since the news broke out. He's just an absolute steal, and you just got to go for him because it's Deshaun Watson. And there's no two ways about it. And I'll probably actually take him with my next pick, which is 8 picks away if I can. Also, unfortunately, Carson Wentz is, I guess, confirmed to go under surgery, and he is out pretty much indefinitely, which is just so unfortunate. I had the Colts doing really well this year. Obviously, that might not be the case. Imagine if Andrew Luck comes out of retirement because Carson Wentz got injured and they just need a quarterback. Is Jacoby Brissett still? I think he might be. I'll have to look that up. It'd be interesting to see what happens there. Obviously, they have to do something, right? Fortunately for them, they have an amazing... oh no, it's Jacob Eason. Wow, they have like no quarterback. That sucks. Obviously, they have like a great defense and an insane running back core, but they need a serviceable quarterback. I don't know who's like available on the market. Maybe Johnny Manziel or something like that will come back out of the woodworks. But they need to do something, and they need to do it fast. So Zach Wilson went. I'm 2 picks away from being able to snag Deshaun. It looks like just the way the draft is going, I want to get him a little earlier than I normally would. For me, the rest of the guys in the draft, they're all just kind of flyers anyways. And the outcome of any of them playing is pretty unknown, or like any of them producing a lot. The outcome for Deshaun Watson, if he plays, is known. He's going to be a very good quarterback. Doesn't matter who his receivers are. He's just that talented. So I am very high on the opportunity to draft him, especially towards the end of most of my drafts. So we're going to snag Deshaun. I might even look at Hunter Henry here. He might even be better than Gesicki this year. Who knows? It really depends. The 1 or 2 seasons we had a 2 tight end set in New England, they did a pretty damn good job. So I'd be curious to see how well they can, continue to do some of that. Okay, so no more. Probably one more running back, one more receiver. Brian Edwards, Crowder. Crowder might not actually be that bad of a choice. He was getting a lot of receptions. MVS is always good. Demarcus Robinson might be forced to step up a bit. I heard that Adam Humphries was developing quite the rapport with Ryan Fitzpatrick as well. Not that that means a whole lot, but it could be useful. Yeah, seems to be about it. You know, actually, Tim Patrick, I didn't realize he was this low. His numbers at the end of this season last year were actually very good. Granted, I think Cortland Sutton was out, but we also saw what Teddy Bridgewater was able to do with just a couple. Oh, we're taking Marlon Mack. Let's go. A couple guys. Marlon Mack is also, I didn't really talk about him before I threw him on the queue there, but Marlon Mack is sneaky good late in the draft because he is another guy I think that is a starter on a lot of other teams. Like if he went somewhere else, he would be a starting running back. It's just because they have Jonathan Taylor that he's not. So, and I'd say he's even better than Alexander Madison. Like if he was on like the Jets, he'd be the starter probably, or if he was on, a lot of teams, probably Detroit, he could start over Swift even, or like in Denver, he'd probably be okay. There's like a lot of spots where you could picture him, performing well. Like imagine if Marlon Mack gets traded to the Rams, right? He'd be a stud. That's like the perfect spot for him to go. And I don't know what the Rams' backup quarterback situation is like, but maybe they have a way to work something out so the Colts can get a quarterback out of it. But yeah, I just think Marlon Mack is starter potential, and he goes unnoticed too much. So Marlon Mack, Kareem Hunt, and like Alexander Madison, I guess a little bit. He's a little less so. Another one we're gonna see. So Melvin Gordon, Marlon Mack, Kareem Hunt, James Robinson. Those are all guys that are taking the backseat to some younger running back. None of those guys I mentioned are all that old either. They're all very good. And they could all start somewhere else. But like I said before about Melvin Gordon and Kareem Hunt, they command some part of that offense. Is it going to be 20%, 30%? Maybe not. But they need some chunk of that offense. And in the right offense or the right circumstances, that chunk can be significant. We've seen what Kareem Hunt can do as like a 1-2 punch with Nick Chubb. Their stats are unreal. If you combine their stats together, they're like an absolute force. And they both produce. They're both good fantasy assets in different spots. Kareem Hunt's more of a flex guy. Obviously, Nick Chubb is an RB1 or low end RB1 maybe. You could potentially see similar outcomes though for guys like Marlon Mack, guys like Melvin Gordon or James Robinson. They're still going to command some chunk of that offense, or their respective offenses anyways. And I think they're going to get some of it too. So I think it's in the best interests for them and their organizations to give them the damn ball sometimes. So I'd be shocked. I just think the risk versus reward on those guys is too good, right? Risk is super low. You're getting them at the end of your draft or very late in your draft where it doesn't really matter. And then if there's an injury or a trade or anything, those guys are starters and they're potential, RB1s for the rest of the year. And it doesn't take a whole lot. There's like a lot of guys in that circumstance. And with a lot of openings for running backs across the league, there's potential some of those guys could get moved if desperation strikes for certain teams and stuff like that. So those are guys I like to keep my radar on at the end of the draft. It's just those guys that fill those voids for teams. So we'll probably finish off. I think think I might. I'm kind of tempted to go with Tim Patrick, even though it's like probably not a good choice. All right, let's look at. Yeah, I guess we go MVS, right? Wow, I always thought he had more receptions than that. That's fine. Darius Slayton, 50 receptions. Okay, so we have Travis Fulgham. 1 pick left. Let's look at tight ends. Eric Ebron could low-key have a season with, wow, 13 touchdowns in 2018. He could low-key do pretty good. See, Zach Ertz is like another decent flyer, right? He goes somewhere else, and he's automatically pretty solid tight end. I think I might just take Zach Ertz just in case. I'm pretty solid across the board. I like the 3-6-6-3 stack also. That seems fine. Not that you really need 3 tight ends. I just don't see, again, right, there's no guys here that could automatically shoot to the top of any respective team. And I think the only option is really Zach Ertz. He's the only guy I could see really doing something like that. So I'm just going to send it on Zach Ertz, I think, and call it. One more pick. So someone did actually draft Carson Wentz. That's hilarious. Mac Jones on the board. Oh, Taylor Heineke could get traded. Andy Dalton could get traded too, potentially. Or Marcus Mariota. I know he signed that contract. Gardner Minshew could go. There's a lot of guys that could. Oh, Nick Foles could get traded too. Yeah, the Colts are gotta be working something out. Mitch Trubisky's in Buffalo now. Alrighty, so that is the end of the draft. Let's see how we did here. So quarterbacks. So our projected outcome is 2808. That's fine. So quarterbacks, we have super high floor with Tannehill, and then high ceilings with these 2 guys. Running backs, a little different. I'd say for Montgomery and Darrell Henderson, they're both going to receive like 80+% of the carries in the offense. So I think they're both in a position to produce quite heavily. The rest of my lineup for running backs is a little questionable. Damian Harris is obviously going to get a lot of carries, but they mix in a lot at New England. Melvin Gordon is a beginning of the season guy, in my opinion. J.D. McKissick is mostly receptions, so if he has one of those games where he has like 12 receptions or something like that'll be a great week for him. And then Marlon Mack, obviously, like I said a lot in this video, was just depending on injuries and stuff of that nature. Stephon Diggs and Calvin Ridley have insanely high floors with insanely high ceilings. And I kind of like that double wide receiver stack at the beginning of the draft. Then we balance it out a bit with Robert Woods. And then the rest of it is all just kind of flyers with Will Fuller, Rager, and MVS. High floor, high ceiling with Andrews. And then 2 high ceiling guys with the other 2. So that is all we got today, boys. We will catch you next time. Peace.